The sky over Houston turned strange on a warm June evening in 2087. People stopped in the streets to stare upward. The normal blue faded as something massive began to block the sun. It wasn't clouds. It was something else. John Miller stood on the roof of the North American Space Defense Force headquarters. As captain of the first response team, he had been woken up at 3 a.m. when the deep space sensors picked up something odd. Now, 18 hours later, he watched with his own eyes as the visitors arrived. "How big is that thing?" asked Annie Peterson, his second-in-command. John checked the readings on his tablet. The main ship is almost 2 miles long. There are 5 smaller ships around it. The radio in John's ear buzzed. "Captain Miller, the President needs you in the command center now." Inside the command center, screens showed the alien ships appearing over major cities around the world. Beijing, London, Moscow, New Delhi, all reported the same thing. Giant ships hanging in the sky, silent and waiting. President Bill Howard looked tired. "Captain, you're our expert on first contact protocols. What do we do?" John took a deep breath. "Sir, we follow the plan. We send the welcome message on all frequencies, and we wait for them to answer." The message went out. Simple words of peace and friendship, sent in 200 languages and basic mathematical code. Hours passed with no reply. Then, at sunset, all screens and devices around the world turned on by themselves. The face that appeared wasn't human. It had gray-blue skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth that seemed too wide. It spoke in perfect English. "People of Earth, I am Lord Zextor of the Valtharian Empire. We have come to evaluate your world for membership in our galactic community." In New York, Susan Clark watched the message from her office at the United Nations. As Secretary General, she would need to represent all of Earth to these visitors. She picked up her secure phone. "Get me the Security Council. We need to meet right now." The next morning, Captain Miller stood in a field outside Houston. A small ship had landed, and he led the welcome team. His orders were simple: be polite, learn what he could, and make no promises. The ship's door opened with a hiss. 3 aliens walked out. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with 4 arms and skin that changed colors slightly as they moved. The one in front wore decorative armor and walked with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. "I am Lord Zextor," the alien said. "You must be the representatives of this world." John stepped forward. "I'm Captain John Miller. On behalf of Earth, I welcome you to our planet." The alien looked around with all 4 eyes, seeming unimpressed. "Your world has been noticed by our scouts. You have reached a minimally acceptable level of development. The Empire requires new resources, and your planet has been selected for evaluation." John kept his face neutral. "We're honored by your interest. Our leaders are eager to learn more about your empire and discuss possible relations between our worlds." Lord Zextor made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Discuss? You misunderstand, Captain. The Empire does not discuss. We evaluate, we classify, and we incorporate. Your world will be given its proper place in our system." At the United Nations, Susan Clark met with the alien delegation. The grand meeting hall fell silent as Lord Zextor explained what membership in the Empire meant. Earth would provide resources, soldiers, and obedience. In return, they would receive protection and guidance. "We will need time to consider your offer," Susan said carefully. The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "There is no negotiation. You will be assimilated within the standard cycle. Resistance is inefficient." After the meeting, Susan called Captain Miller. "John, I don't like this at all. They're not here as friends." "I know," he replied. "The way they look at us, it's like we're already their property." That night, more ships arrived. They positioned themselves over major resource deposits, oil fields, rare earth metal mines, fresh water sources. Military bases around the world reported being scanned by unknown energy. The Valtharian Empire had arrived, and Earth was facing its greatest challenge. No one knew it yet, but humanity's response would shock the galaxy. The morning dew still clung to the leaves in the Amazon rainforest as Dr. Alan Foster wiped sweat from his forehead. He watched the alien scientists move through the jungle with their strange devices. They called it an assessment, but it looked more like theft. "Excuse me," Alan said to the Valtharian in charge, a blue-skinned alien named Science Officer Cruel. "That plant you're taking is critically endangered. We have laws protecting it." Cruel didn't even look up from his work. "Your laws are irrelevant. The Empire requires samples of all unique biological material." Alan bit his tongue. For 3 weeks now, the Valtharians had been all over Earth. They took what they wanted and ignored any human concerns. As a leading xenobiologist, Alan had been excited to work with aliens. Now he just felt sick watching them. The alien cut down a rare orchid and dropped it into a container. "This species has medicinal properties your primitive science hasn't discovered yet. Quite valuable. We would have discovered it ourselves eventually," Alan said. Cruel made the strange blinking pattern that Alan now recognized as Valtharian laughter. "Perhaps, but now you won't need to. The Empire will process it for you." Later that day, Alan sent his daily report to the United Nations. Like all scientists assigned to monitor the aliens, he documented everything he saw. The evidence was piling up, and none of it was good. In Washington, D.C., Karen Wright stared at her computer screen with growing horror. As a military analyst, she had been tasked with learning about other worlds in the Valtharian Empire. Using data secretly copied from the aliens' own systems, she was building a picture of what membership really meant. "They stripped the forests of Proxima Centauri IV completely," she told her boss, General Sam Davis. "The native population was moved to work camps. They call them resource extraction facilities." The general looked grim. "What about more developed worlds? Any that were at our level?" Karen nodded. Sirius B had a civilization similar to ours. They were given a choice: become soldiers for the Empire or become workers. Most of their planet is now a mining operation. And if planets resist... Karen pulled up another file. Taw City III tried to fight back. The Empire used something called gravity weapons. Pulled their oceans right off the planet. Total extinction event. In the United Nations building in New York, Lisa Rodriguez sorted through hundreds of reports like Alan's and Karen's. As an aide to Secretary General Clark, she compiled information from around the globe. The pattern was clear and frightening. In China, the aliens were studying Earth's manufacturing systems, but showing no interest in human workers. In Russia, they were mapping all mineral deposits. In Australia, they were testing soil samples. Everywhere, they spoke of Earth as if it was already theirs. Lisa knocked on the door of Secretary General Clark's office. "Ma'am, I finished the global assessment report. It's not good." Susan Clark looked up from her desk. Dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept much. "Tell me." "Based on all reports, the Valtharians see us as resources, not partners. They've done this to hundreds of worlds. They take what they want: minerals, plants, water. They use the local people as workers or soldiers. They don't negotiate, they don't compromise, and they don't leave." Susan looked out her window at the massive Valtharian ship hovering over the New York skyline. "What about their technology? Any weaknesses?" "Some," Lisa said. "They're careless around us. They don't see us as a threat, so they don't hide much. Our scientists are learning a lot by just watching them." Susan nodded slowly. "Keep collecting information. And Lisa, tell our people to be cooperative but slow. Buy us time. I think we're going to need it." Outside, the shadow of the alien ship darkened the streets of New York. Similar scenes played out in cities around the world. The Valtharian Empire was measuring Earth for its new role, not as a partner, but as property. What the aliens failed to understand was that humans don't surrender easily, and with each passing day, Earth was learning more about its unwelcome visitors. The Arctic wind howled outside the research station. Inside, Frank Thompson poured his third cup of coffee and stared at the monitors. For 30 years, he had run this station, studying climate patterns. Now he watched as aliens drilled into his beloved glaciers. "They're going too deep," said Mary Collins, one of his best scientists. "That ice sheet is unstable." Frank grabbed his radio. "Valtharian team, this is Station Chief Thompson. You need to stop drilling immediately. That area isn't safe." The reply came back quick and dismissive. "Human concerns are noted. The Empire requires core samples. Continue your observation duties." Frank slammed his fist on the table. "I'm not observing. I'm warning you. That glacier has a massive crack running through it. Your drilling will." The warning came too late. On the monitor, Frank watched in horror as the ice beneath the Valtharian drilling team shifted. A massive section of glacier collapsed. 3 human scientists who had been assigned to assist the aliens disappeared into the growing crevasse, along with 2 Valtharians. "Emergency teams, move now," Frank shouted into the radio. He grabbed his cold weather gear and ran outside with the rescue crew. 6 hours later, they had recovered the bodies of their colleagues. The Valtharians had rescued their own people using their advanced technology, but hadn't bothered helping search for the humans. Frank stood face to face with the Valtharian commander, a tall alien named Field Supervisor Drek. "3 good people are dead because you ignored our warnings." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in that strange pattern that humans had learned meant indifference. Negligible losses. The samples were recovered successfully. Frank couldn't believe what he was hearing. Negligible. Peter, Samantha, and Joe had families. They had lives. "The Empire acknowledges your emotional response, but it does not change our assessment schedule," Drek replied coldly. "Your species places too much value on individual units." What the alien didn't notice was that Mary had her phone out, recording everything. That night, she and Frank uploaded the uncensored footage to the global network. By morning, it had spread worldwide. People watched in shock as the Valtharian dismissed the deaths of 3 humans as negligible losses. Protests broke out in cities around the world. The final straw had been broken. In an emergency session of the United Nations, representatives from all nations watched the Arctic footage in grim silence. When it ended, something remarkable happened. Countries that had been enemies for decades stood united. Secretary General Susan Clark called for a vote. "Those in favor of rejecting the Valtharian Empire's offer of membership, raise your hands." Every hand in the room went up. For the first time in UN history, a vote was truly unanimous. The next day, Susan Clark stood in her office, preparing to deliver humanity's message. Lord Zextor had been summoned to hear Earth's response to the Empire's offer. The alien lord entered with his usual arrogance, flanked by guards. "I trust you have finalized your acceptance of Imperial membership. The assessment phase is nearly complete." Susan took a deep breath. "Lord Zextor, I speak for all nations of Earth. We have carefully considered your Empire's offer, and our answer is no. Earth is not your resource depot. Earth is not your conscription ground. Earth is not yours to take." The alien's color changed slightly, showing surprise. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation." "No, it isn't," Susan agreed. "This is a rejection. Your Empire is not welcome here. Your assessment teams will leave our planet immediately." Lord Zextor's voice turned cold. "No world rejects the Empire. Your decision is unfortunate." Within hours, Valtharian ships repositioned themselves over major cities worldwide. Their message was broadcast globally. "Your resistance is noted but irrelevant. Preparations will continue according to Imperial protocol. Compliance is expected within 7 planetary rotations." As night fell across Earth, people looked up at the alien ships with new determination. The Valtharians had made a critical error. They had pushed humanity too far. In military bases around the world, soldiers prepared for what might come next. In laboratories, scientists studied stolen alien technology. And in homes everywhere, ordinary people made a simple choice. Earth would not surrender. The Arctic wind howled outside the research station. Inside, Frank Thompson poured his third cup of coffee and stared at the monitors. For 30 years he had run the station, studying climate patterns. Now he watched as aliens drilled into his beloved glaciers. "They're going too deep," said Mary Collins, one of his best scientists. "That ice sheet is unstable." Frank grabbed his radio. "Valtharian team, this is Station Chief Thompson. You need to stop drilling immediately. That area isn't safe." The reply came back quick and dismissive. "Human concerns are noted. The Empire requires core samples. Continue your observation duties." Frank slammed his fist on the table. "I'm not observing. I'm warning you. That glacier has a massive crack running through it. Your drilling will." The warning came too late. On the monitor, Frank watched in horror as the ice beneath the Valtharian drilling team shifted. A massive section of glacier collapsed. 3 human scientists who had been assigned to assist the aliens disappeared into the growing crevasse along with 2 Valtharians. "Emergency teams, move now," Frank shouted into the radio. He grabbed his cold weather gear and ran outside with the rescue crew. 6 hours later, they had recovered the bodies of their colleagues. The Valtharians had rescued their own people using their advanced technology, but hadn't bothered helping search for the humans. Frank stood face to face with the Valtharian commander, a tall alien named Field Supervisor Drek. "3 good people are dead because you ignored our warnings." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in that strange pattern that humans had learned meant indifference. "Negligible losses. The samples were recovered successfully." Frank couldn't believe what he was hearing. Negligible. Peter, Samantha, and Joe had families. They had lives. "The Empire acknowledges your emotional response, but it does not change our assessment schedule," Drek replied coldly. "Your species places too much value on individual units." What the alien didn't notice was that Mary had her phone out, recording everything. That night, she and Frank uploaded the uncensored footage to the global network. By morning, it had spread worldwide. People watched in shock as the Valtharian dismissed the deaths of 3 humans as negligible losses. Protests broke out in cities around the world. The final straw had been broken. In an emergency session of the United Nations, representatives from all nations watched the Arctic footage in grim silence. When it ended, something remarkable happened. Countries that had been enemies for decades stood united. Secretary General Susan Clark called for a vote. "Those in favor of rejecting the Valtharian Empire's offer of membership, raise your hands." Every hand in the room went up. For the first time in UN history, a vote was truly unanimous. The next day, Susan Clark stood in her office, preparing to deliver humanity's message. Lord Zextor had been summoned to hear Earth's response to the Empire's offer. The alien lord entered with his usual arrogance, flanked by guards. "I trust you have finalized your acceptance of Imperial membership. The assessment phase is nearly complete." Susan took a deep breath. "Lord Zextor, I speak for all nations of Earth. We have carefully considered your Empire's offer, and our answer is no. Earth is not your resource depot. Earth is not your conscription ground. Earth is not yours to take." The alien's color changed slightly, showing surprise. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation." "No, it isn't," Susan agreed. "This is a rejection. Your Empire is not welcome here. Your assessment teams will leave our planet immediately." Lord Zextor's voice turned cold. "No world rejects the Empire. Your decision is unfortunate." Within hours, Valtharian ships repositioned themselves over major cities worldwide. Their message was broadcast globally. "Your resistance is noted but irrelevant. Preparations will continue according to Imperial protocol. Compliance is expected within 7 planetary rotations." As night fell across Earth, people looked up at the alien ships with new determination. The Valtharians had made a critical error. They had pushed humanity too far. In military bases around the world, soldiers prepared for what might come next. In laboratories, scientists studied stolen alien technology. And in homes everywhere, ordinary people made a simple choice. Earth would not surrender. The United Nations building stood tall in the morning sun. Inside, every seat was filled. In the 6 months since the Valtharians arrived, the world had changed. Old enemies sat side by side. Countries that once threatened each other with war now planned together for survival. Secretary General Susan Clark straightened her blue jacket and checked her notes one last time. Today would change everything. Her aide, Lisa Rodriguez, entered the office. "They're here," Lisa said. "Lord Zextor and 5 other Valtharians just landed on the roof." Susan nodded. "And our security measures?" "In place. We've scanned for weapons. The Special Forces teams are hidden but ready." "Good." Susan took a deep breath. It's time. The main assembly hall fell silent as the Valtharians entered. Lord Zextor walked with the confidence of someone who expected victory. His 4 eyes scanned the room, noting representatives from every nation on Earth. "I am pleased to see you all gathered," he said. "This will make the transition to imperial rule more efficient. I assume you have prepared your surrender terms." Susan Clark walked to the central podium. Behind her sat world leaders who had put aside decades of distrust to stand together. "Lord Zextor," she began, her voice calm but firm, "we have not gathered to surrender. We have gathered to deliver our response after careful consideration of your empire's offer." She pressed a button, and screens around the room lit up with images. Pictures of Valtharians carelessly destroying habitats, videos of them dismissing human deaths, documents showing their plans to strip Earth of resources. "We have studied your empire thoroughly," Susan continued. "We have seen how you strip worlds bare and discard their people. We have witnessed your casual cruelty and your bureaucratic tyranny." The alien leader's skin changed color slightly, a sign of irritation. "This is irrelevant. The Empire." Susan cut him off. "I am speaking now. For 6 months, we have watched you. For 6 months, we have learned about you, and now we have made our decision." The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. "Today, we do not merely reject membership in your empire." Susan's voice grew stronger. "We ban you from our world entirely. The Valtharian Empire is not welcome on Earth or anywhere in our solar system. You will depart immediately and completely." Lord Zextor stood motionless for a moment. Then he made the strange sound humans had learned was Valtharian laughter. "You misunderstand your position," he said. "This is not a negotiation. You have no power to ban us. You have no technology to threaten us. You have no choice but to submit." Susan didn't flinch. "We understand our position perfectly. We have studied your other conquests. We know what happens to worlds that join your empire. We choose to stand against you." "And if we choose to stay?" Lord Zextor asked, his voice low and threatening. The Secretary General's response was calm but resolute. "Then you will learn why no empire has ever successfully conquered Earth." The alien commander moved closer to the podium, towering over Susan. "You speak brave words, but your weapons are primitive. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What can you possibly do against our ships?" Susan smiled slightly. "That's the curious thing about humans, Lord Zextor. Throughout our history, we have faced enemies who were stronger, better armed, and more numerous. Sometimes we lost, but often, against all odds, we won." She looked directly into his 4 eyes. "We are not like the other worlds you have conquered. We do not surrender easily. We adapt. We overcome. And we never, ever stop fighting for our freedom." Around the room, world leaders stood in silent support. The Russian president, the Chinese premier, the American president, the European chancellor, leaders from Africa, South America, and Asia. For the first time in human history, Earth spoke with one voice. "You have 24 hours to remove all Valtharian personnel and ships from Earth and our solar system," Susan said firmly. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war, and we will respond accordingly." Lord Zextor's color shifted to a deep purple, a sign of rage. "You have made a grave mistake. The Empire does not tolerate defiance, and Earth does not tolerate invaders," Susan replied. "The choice is yours. Leave in peace or face humanity at war." As the Voltharian delegation stormed out, the assembly hall erupted in applause. The line had been drawn. Earth had spoken. No one knew if they could win the fight that was coming. But for the first time since the Voltharians arrived, humanity had chosen its own path. The 24-hour deadline passed. As the final minute ticked away, people around the world held their breath. Then, exactly as expected, the Voltharian Empire attacked. Massive energy beams shot down from their ships, targeting military bases in North America, Asia, and Europe. The night sky lit up with blinding light as the aliens unleashed their power. In the underground command center, Colonel Richard Hayes watched the attack unfold on large screens. "All units, execute Defense Plan Alpha," he ordered calmly. What the Voltharians didn't know was that the real military bases had been emptied weeks ago. What they were destroying were clever decoys. "They took the bait," said General Lin from the Chinese command. "Orbital defense platforms are ready." Richard nodded. "Activate them now." In space, hidden satellites that had been placed during the 6 months of preparation suddenly came to life. They fired specialized electromagnetic pulses at the Voltharian ships. The alien vessels didn't explode or crash, but their weapons systems flickered and failed. Lord Zextor stared in disbelief as warning lights flashed across his command ship. "What is happening? How are they interfering with our systems?" His technology officer worked frantically at the controls. "Unknown, my lord. They seem to have studied our shield frequencies. This should be impossible for their level of technology." "Fix it immediately," Zextor demanded. On Earth, Commander Diane Miller led the first counterattack. Her pilots flew advanced aircraft modified with technology reverse-engineered from Voltharian components. They rose from hidden bases, targeting the now vulnerable alien ships. "Remember the training," Diane told her pilots through the radio. "Hit the weak points under their command modules. Don't waste shots on their armor." Her squadron executed perfect attack runs, focusing on the exact weak spots identified by the alien allies who had joined Earth's resistance. The Voltharian ships, designed to fight against opponents with less knowledge of their systems, found themselves surprisingly vulnerable. On the diplomatic front, William Chen activated his network of contacts throughout the Empire. The Nuxian resistance launched attacks on Voltharian outposts. The Zentari disabled communication relays. The Breckens sabotaged supply lines. Suddenly, the mighty Empire was fighting enemies on multiple fronts. The battle for Earth lasted 3 days. Voltharian forces, expecting an easy victory, instead faced precisely targeted resistance. Human forces suffered heavy losses, but they fought with determination and clever tactics. On the 3rd day, a special team led by Major George Martinez executed the most daring mission of the war. Using a captured Voltharian shuttle, they approached the Imperial command ship. The aliens, assuming it was one of their own returning, allowed it to dock. Team 1 in position. George whispered into his radio as his soldiers moved through the massive alien vessel, moving to capture the command center. They fought their way through surprised Voltharian guards, using weapons designed specifically to penetrate alien armor. When they reached the command center, Lord Zextor himself stood waiting, 4 arms holding advanced weapons. "You primitives dare to board my ship," he snarled. George didn't waste time talking. His team fired special stun weapons developed by Dr. Martinez. The Voltharian lord collapsed, unconscious but alive. "Target secured," George reported. "The head of the snake is captured." In Geneva, 1 week after the battle ended, Secretary General Susan Clark sat across from the captured Lord Zextor. The once proud Imperial commander was now a prisoner, his 4 arms bound by restraints designed specifically for his species. "I still don't understand how you defeated us," Zextor said, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "You are primitives. You should have surrendered like all the others." Susan smiled slightly. "That was your first mistake. You assumed we were like the others." She placed a document on the table between them. "These are Earth's terms. The Valtharian Empire will recognize Earth's sovereignty and the entire Sol system as protected space. Additionally, all worlds currently under Imperial control will be granted the right of self-determination." Zextor's 4 eyes blinked in disbelief. "You expect the Empire to free its territories? Impossible." "Not impossible," said William Chen, who stood beside Susan. "Many of your subject worlds are already in rebellion. Your command structure is in disarray. We've shared our defensive technology with them. The Empire as you knew it is finished. With their command ship captured and rebellions spreading throughout Imperial territories, the remaining Valtharian forces had no choice but to retreat from Earth orbit. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Empire had been defeated. In the years that followed, Earth established diplomatic relations with former Imperial worlds. William Chen became Earth's first galactic ambassador, traveling to distant planets to build new alliances. 5 years after the Valtharian retreat, a historic meeting took place in Geneva. Representatives from 27 formerly subjugated species gathered to sign the Galactic Charter of Sovereign Rights. The Grand Hall was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Some breathed different air mixtures. Some had multiple limbs or eyes. Some communicated through colors or scents. Yet they all shared one thing: they had regained their freedom. Ambassador Chen stood at the podium, looking out at the gathered representatives. "Today marks a new beginning. Not just for Earth, but for all worlds who wish to determine their own future." The final clause of the Charter, proposed by Earth and unanimously adopted, became known as the Terran Principle. No world may be forced to join any alliance, empire, or coalition against the will of its people. All species have the innate right to determine their own destiny. Dr. Olivia Martinez, now head of Earth's Interstellar Technology Division, watched the signing ceremony from the audience. Beside her sat Major George Martinez, her brother, and the man who had captured Lord Zextor. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" she asked him. George shook his head. "When those ships first appeared, I thought we might be done for. But I should have known better. Humans don't give up easily." On a view screen, they could see the once mighty Valtharian Empire had fractured into competing factions. Their 1,000-year history of conquest had ended because they had underestimated one small blue planet. Susan Clark, still serving as Secretary General, signed the charter on behalf of Earth. As she did, she thought back to that moment of defiance in the UN hall, when she had told the Valtharians they were not welcome. Earth's message had been delivered and heard throughout the galaxy. "You are not welcome here," became not just a rejection of one empire, but a declaration of principle that would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. As for humanity, they took their place among the stars not as conquerors like the Valtharians, but as defenders of a simple idea, that every world, every species, has the right to choose its own path. And any empire that forgot that lesson would have to answer to Earth.